Same-sex marriage passes Senate after bipartisan breakthrough. Wow. Let's check this out real quick. Same-sex marriage bill passes Senate after bipartisan breakthrough. The 61-36 vote sends the legislation back to the House, which means it's expected to be approved and sent to President Biden. Love this. 61. They had one bonus in there to break the filibuster. Fantastic. Wonder who'd have got there and filibustered this shit. The Senate passed landmark legislation on Tuesday to mandate federal recognition of same-sex marriages as in the lame duck. Congress mustered a notable moment for the bipartisanship before Democrats were to lose their before Democrats were to lose their unified control on Capitol Hill. The 61-36 vote put the bill on track to become law in the final weeks before Republicans assumed the majority in the House of Representatives and at the start of the new Congress in January. It marked one of the final major legislative achievements for Democrats before Republicans shift the focus in the House of Representatives to conducting investigations of President Biden's administration and family members. We're talking about Hunter Biden. Now, here's the thing that I think about is funny about Republicans, right? We got a handful of Republicans, enough, fine, whatever. They were really concerned about the exemptions for religious exemptions, right? Religious freedom written into the bill. So it got sent back. This was all going on before the midterms. And somebody had written me, he's like, well, I'm surprised they did this after the midterms. So they usually only do this to get votes and kick the can down the road like they have with Roe v. Wade and codifying abortion and all this other stuff. And yeah, that generally is true. But at the same time, I think that this is one of those things where it's like maybe for once something transcended the political agenda, right? And I think if they would have gotten this done before the midterms, they actually would have had a stronger midterm performance because they could have been like, hey, we just codified gay marriage and interracial marriage, by the way, which was like I think it's 97% of people in the United States support interracial marriage, which who the is a 3%? Where are those people at? But anyways, they could have got this done and say, hey, we codified marriage. Now we're going to do the same thing with abortion. But I think abortion is a little bit trickier because it's less of a majority issue and it's much more nuanced, right? Like if you're listening to this podcast, you probably think that gay people should be able to get married, right? I think 90% of you, and there's a few of you out there that don't for some reasons, which Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh probably articulate. And we're gonna discuss a little bit of their take on this whole thing. But when we look at it, it's one of those issues where it's like, why is this not codified yet, right? It's like we're relying on a Supreme Court decision, which can change. Let's put this shit into law, right? It's constitutional, clearly. So let's go. So they finally did. And I think it's appropriate for some religious exemptions, right? If you're a church that doesn't want to marry gay folks, fine, right? Who cares? The gay folks can get married somewhere else. It is what it is. I understand, whatever. I think it's silly. But it's good that it finally happened, and I'm happy for this. I'm happy this is like done. We're done with this. Let's get this. And that's where we should be with abortion too. We should make some kind of common sense compromise at the federal level. It's not that complicated, right? I mean, it is more nuanced than this by a long shot, but there is common ground there that we can come to some pragmatic solutions and get this thing over with, right? And like move on with our lives and not give the extremists on either end more time to pull the strings. I don't know why that's, and that's, if you think that life begins at the moment that conception is considered, you're an extremist. If you think that you should be able to abort a child that's healthy full term, that's extreme. I don't know why those two things are extreme. Why are we having that conversation? If you think that black and white people should be able to get married or interracial people should be able to get married, you're a crazy person. If you think that gay people getting married somehow devalues your marriage, that's bigotry. I'm sorry. It's what it is, right? It's viewing other people who have different beliefs than you as less than you, or as somehow devaluing the commitments you've made in your own life. They have nothing to do with that. They have absolutely nothing to do with that. So we're actually going to play this. I haven't had the video up. Let me pull this video up real quick. We're going to play this. This is Shapiro and Matt Walsh talking about
one of the things that's happened here.
Excuse me. Talking about gay marriage and the problem that it has as far as devaluing culture, which is to me, very strange. But we'll hear them articulate their arguments. Now, I want to say this when it comes to the way we're looking at this, right? Matt Walsh was embarrassed on Joe Rogan. Now, if you sit Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro down, any of these guys, right, that are anti-gay marriage folks, if you sit them down with someone like Rogan or Russell Brand, and they try and defend why they think gay marriage should be illegal, they're going to make a fool of themselves, which is what Matt Walsh did, right? The last hour of that podcast was so hard to listen to because it was him making no sense, right? And here's the thing about Matt Walsh is really interesting. Like, I liked the What Is Woman documentary, right? I think he could have had I think he could have done a better job. I think it was some missed opportunities in there. I think because of who he is, he needed to have that self-awareness and balance himself out a bit. But he didn't do that. So it's one of those things where he has a majority position there and he's really milking that majority position. But when you get into his real ideology, it's kind of extreme. Like, it's pretty ridiculous. So it's like he has one majoritarian point that he's milking for all it's worth, but that's kind of a honeypot to get you into his bullshit. And you can see this on him. Listen, I don't want to be a dick here. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but you look at this guy and it's like, he doesn't seem like a happy guy. Does he seem like a happy guy? He makes his face like with his lips up, like frowning. It's like, dude, I don't know. Sometimes I see religious folks and I'm like, man, that person is like really joyful. You know what I mean? Like they really are embodying kind of that Christ-like like joy, right? There's something about, there's some Christians that do that. And some Christians try and they're faking it and they're hiding shit. And it's so obvious. Like my mom's preacher at her church, the dude's, I would love to see his browser history. Like I can feel it on him. He's trying too hard to do this thing. And it's like every time that's happened, it's like there's some kind of sexual abuse going on. Not saying that's him. I'm just saying from my personal experience, other times that has happened with people that were leaders at religious organizations. So it's like I see this guy who's struggling with this. And so he gets embarrassed on Joe Rogan. And then he goes to his safe space, right? Which is what the Daily Wire is. Make no mistake, there is so little ideological diversity in there. It's like some of them are Catholic and some of them are Jews. Like that's really like that's your diversity, right? Like that's it. There's not a whole lot going on. They may have moderate disagreements on the margins. They've created an ideological safe space at their media company. That is what the Daily Wire is, right? And I say that saying, I think that I would make a lot of money for the Daily Wire if I had a Daily Wire show. I think it'd be great. I think we'd have a lot of fun. I've got some views and some experiences that I think would actually add a lot of value to the Daily Wire. I think their marketing machine combined with my voice would make both of us more money than they're making now. If they wanted to make an economic decision, bring me on. Let's go. Right? Let's go. We can do it. It'd be fun. But they don't encourage ideological diversity because that's not what they're trying to do. But they will criticize other companies and other people for not having ideological diversity that leans their way, right? So it's this weird, like, two wrongs make a right logic that I always see coming from the Daily Wire. And this is somebody, I actually pay $15 a month for the Daily Wire because I enjoy some of the shit. I like hearing some of this stuff. It's not that I hate these guys, you know what I mean? But when I look at this, I think, okay, well, Matt was embarrassed. And now, so he goes back to his safe space with him and Ben Shapiro where he won't be challenged and he can try and articulate these ideas and still does a terrible job. So this is their effects of same-sex marriage on culture part 2. And that's what you guys did to kind of like, just to hear this out here.
You know, one of the things that's happened here, Matt, is all of the redefinition of marriage. You know, again, everyone wants to make it about same-sex marriage, but it really isn't about same-sex marriage. It's really about the decline and fall of Western civilization.
So it's not about same-sex marriage. It's about the decline of Western civilization. There could be no other correlates, right? Like, what other things have happened in the past 50 years that may have contributed to a decline in Western civilization? Maybe the fact that our obesity has gone off the charts, right? Does that have anything to do with the gays? Does a guy sucking another guy's dick make somebody else fat and lazy? I mean, is that where we're at, right? Is it the untreated mental health problems that have existed in this country for decades that have been quashed by SSRIs, and we have a generational passed down bullshit from one another, right? Since the boomers became powerful, passed down emotional incompetence, right? Lack of meaning in life. Suicide rates are through the roof. And you're going to blame it on the gays, right? You're going to blame that on the gay people getting married. So do we not have the same view of what the downfall of Western civilization is? And is it because that you're so afraid to defend your ideology against the clear and present issues with Western civilization that you praise as if it were a religion, are you so scared to address those things that you scapegoat gay folks? Maybe that's what it is, right? I don't disagree that Western civilization is collapsing in on itself. I happen to think that's late stage capitalism, right? But since I don't view religions or economic systems as sacred, right? I didn't buy that propaganda. I can look at them through a nuanced lens and be like, hey, there are places where this makes sense. And there's places where it just clearly doesn't make sense. And I don't get emotionally involved in making those decisions. It just is what it is, right? So when you look at this and you think, okay, it's about the downfall of Western civilization, and you attribute that to gay folks, right? And then you think that if someone actually believes that, what happened to that nightclub down in Colorado Springs makes sense, right? If my mom, as a religious woman and that cares about me deeply, really thinks I'm going to hell, she should be stressed out. That's a big deal, right? She should be worried. So it's like, but I don't think she really thinks that. I think she thinks that she thinks that, and it's okay. We're all good, right? But if you really think that gay folks getting married is a devaluation of Western culture, I think you're actually completely wrong on the opposite end of the spectrum. I think that by restricting marriage to your chosen group, you're actually undermining marriage as something more than a structured relationship between two consenting adults that love each other, hopefully, but that's not required. Love isn't required to get married. Children aren't required. We get into that a little bit as well here.
My marriage, what you end up with is people who are not actually maturing as human beings. You have endless adolescence. You have no procreation, no children. The West is now reproducing at well under replacement rates. The only Western country that is reproducing above replacement rates is actually Israel. That's the only one. That's because it is a very a culturally and religiously based tradition. There are wide differences, by the way, within Western civilization among religious believers, right? Religious believers are still getting married. They are still having kids. They are still not getting divorced nearly as often. People who are not religious are not getting married. And what you're seeing, this has an impact politically, actually. You're seeing a rising voting bloc in the United States. The rising voting bloc is single women. Single women are an increasing percentage of the American population. They voted overwhelmingly for the Democrats, and they voted on the basis, presumably, of a couple of actual policies. One is more government largesse, which makes sense. If you don't have a partner, then having the government provide some support makes some sense. And two, abortion, because, again, what you want to be able to do is not be, quote unquote, saddled with a child, the way that Barack Obama talked about his daughters being, quote unquote, punished with a child. Well, as we as a society move away from the idea that men have a duty to produce and then defend their children, and that women have a duty to bear and rear their children, and that this is how society functions. As we move away from that, it shouldn't be a surprise that society is falling apart.
Yeah, it's not.
No, I want to think about this too. Let's think about this idea, because we've linked gay marriage to abortion, even though gay folks can't have children with each other because they're gay. Now they could force themselves into a type of relationship that they don't want, and then I don't know, like figure it out later, traumatize their children. We could do that. But now we've linked gay folks to abortion, even though you would think, now these guys both don't think gay couples should be able to adopt either, right? These things, if you're a gay couple, you should not be able to adopt or get married, right? So you're basically barred from like normal life, right? So it's not actually about the kids. You understand that? Because gay couples can be really great parents, right? Straight couples can be really bad parents. Gay couples can be bad parents. Straight couple. It's like it's about people, right? It's about the individual, which these people love individualism when they're talking about it as in the American sense, right? Individual liberty, ability, all these things, until it threatens their theology. Then we have a problem, right? Then things start to conflict, and this is where they get super tangled up. And they don't see their own blind spots. I mean, they're blind spots. You don't see them. It's kind of how it goes. So when we look at this whole thing, we've now linked gay marriage to abortion, and then single women being a problem, and men staying in perpetual adolescence. And I think there's a lot to say about this men staying in perpetual adolescence piece. I think that's actually a really astute observation. Jordan Peterson hits this as well. Liver King. What's the other guy's name? The guy that got canceled from everything. The kickboxer. You know what I'm talking about. I forget what his name is, but you're screaming it at the mic right now. I get it. But what the is his name? Anyways, but these guys tap into this culture where it's what you see is you do have a prolonged adolescence in men, which I think is a problem, right? And it's like Peter Pan syndrome is what it's called. And then you have people kind of tapping into that because there is a longing for men to want to grow up, right? You don't want to stay in Never Never Land forever. There's a longing for men to want to grow up. It may happen at different times. Some men are forced to grow up at 18. Some don't grow up till they're 30. Some don't do it till they're 60, and that's a problem, right? And Peterson talks about this. Like, if you think, a 3-year-old is annoying, think about a 5-year-old that's actually a 3-year-old, right? It's like Gabor Mate breaks his arguments down, and they have a healthy conflict there. But I think that when you look at it, this prolonged adolescence is a problem. But at the same time, we've shifted away from things, thanks to a lot of the things that these guys endorse, right? We've shifted away from a place where upward mobility is there, right? You have this, like, as a culture, we used to have this kind of, you work a minimum wage job in high school. After high school, you work your way up. Maybe you do something. Maybe you work at a mechanic. You move your way up, and you end up with this, like, you kind of mature as you need to, right? Because when you're a young man, right out of college, right out of high school, you get your new job, you got your first set of money, you're going to be drinking, you're going to be doing shit, you're going to stay up late, but you're young, so you can kind of rebound, right? You can go to work hungover and you're fine. You get into your 30s, that shit doesn't really play anymore, right? So you kind of progress, and then, okay, you meet somebody, you have a relationship, you have a kid, you have to grow up a little bit to be into that situation. You grow into life, right? You grow into life through upward mobility, through opportunity. Right. And as you learn how to take advantage of that opportunity, gain that opportunity, learn, grow, you grow as a man or a woman, right? But I'm speaking about men specifically here. You grow out of that phase, right? And what we've done as a culture by creating this homogenous type of blob as far as careers and opportunities go, we stay in a cycle. Without upward mobility, masculinity doesn't advance in a healthy way. It finds other ways to express itself that are negative as shit. Right? And that's why you get Andrew Tate. That's his name. So that's why you get these kind of people who are leveraging that, because there's nuggets of truth in what they have to say. If you ever sit and listen to Andrew Tate long form, there's nuggets of truth in what he has to say. And it taps into something there, this prolonged adolescence. But the idea that gay marriage leads to that is so incredibly incompetent and ridiculous. Like, how does that how do you draw those conclusions unless you talk really fast with non sequiturs? You see what I'm saying? So I'm saying that we should create an environment in our society, right? And maybe that means things are more expensive because we make them here. Maybe that means that we take a nuanced view of why we have this masculinity crisis and do something about it that isn't criticizing gay folks. Right? It isn't scapegoating people we don't agree with, that we don't understand, that want to have sex in a different way than we do, right? Because Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh will look at my relationship with my wife, 2 consenting adults, heterosexual, mostly I'm heterosexual, she's, hetero-flexible, and they would shit on my relationship, right? I've had conservatives do that because it's non-traditional. We do things a little different. We do it our own way. We take ownership of our own relationship, right? I give 0 fucks what Matt Walsh to say about how to live a life because I don't want to live a life like Matt Walsh. I chose that for myself. I want that freedom. To be honest with you, Matt Walsh is a threat to my personal freedom, right? Now, I don't want to take up any violence against the guy, but I'll fight him every chance I can because he is a threat to my way of life, right? So I challenge him with ideas. I break this stuff down. So when I look at this, I take it very personally as well because I have a relationship outside of what these guys deem as appropriate, and they would prefer that I don't have the freedom to do so. They would prefer I don't have the freedom to do psychedelics, right? They want to limit my freedom. So when you look at it that way, freedom becomes much more nuanced, right? It's like, which freedoms do you value? That's what freedom means to you, right? We can look at the textbook freedom. That's why I get super rowdy with this shit. But let's keep going. I'm rambling a lot today.
And that's why there are a lot of consequences, as you point out. I mean, the collapse of civilization happens, and that's much more important than the political consequences. But as far as the politics go, this is one of the reasons why Republicans are quite foolish to give up on the battle for marriage, and then by extension, giving up on the battle for the family, because along with civilization collapse.
You hear that? These subtle things, they do this. Tucker Carlson does this, even though he's more astute than Matt Walsh. This idea that like it's a war on the family. It's a war by saying happy holidays. Boomers think it's a war on Christmas. By gay folks getting married and adopting kids and creating homes and lives together, that's a war on your family. It has nothing to do with you guys. And what you need to understand is we live in a fucking melting pot. It's been this way for so long. Religious freedom, right? The practice the freedom to practice your beliefs is a beautiful thing that we have in this country. It's a beautiful thing that we have. And that means that to one set of people, marriage means one thing. And to another set of people, it means something else. So we kind of have to have like an imperfect system of a loose definition of what marriage is to then accommodate the fact that we have freedom of religion in our country, freedom of belief, freedom of expression. These are all freedom of speech. These are all very important things. And these guys will jerk off to the Constitution until it becomes inconvenient to them, right? And then they go to the Bible. So it's like we get in this situation where it's like we have this really challenging situation where it's like, dude, can you not see that within your community, which is what's important, right? Within your community, your religious community, your I'm sure the proximity to you, where you live, there's a certain type of normalized behavior. And you participate in your chosen community with your chosen beliefs, and that's what you guys do. Right. And if somebody's different than your, community, and that's how things work, right? They feel a little bit ostracized, and that's how it goes, right? Same thing if Matt Walsh walked into a gay bar, he'd feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because that's not his community. But they situate themselves in their own way based on their beliefs, right? And not all gay people are the same, and not all black folks are the same. And there's cultural trends, but there's always outliers, right? So we have to, at the federal level, have a general statement saying this is what marriage is, this is what it legally means, and then it's up to you with your freedom to choose how you want that to manifest in your own life. You get me? You feel me, dude? Like, it's not that complicated. And Joe Rogan did a pretty shitty job of trying to explain this, right? He's like, it's people that love each other. And it's like, that's too simple. That's too simple, and it's too ambiguous. You got to break this down. It's like, hey, man, your community is going to believe what it wants to believe, right? And I think if Mormons want to date or marry multiple women, like, great, do your thing. That's consenting adults, right? As long as no one's being coerced or harmed or nothing illegal is going on and everybody's of age, hey, that's fine. You know what I mean? That doesn't threaten my situation or my life or whatever. And my community's with people that share my beliefs, we have our own thing, is what we see marriage as. And me and my wife have that, which is the most important part. Continue.
Collapsing. Also, the Republican Party is going to collapse a lot sooner than that. You're making yourself irrelevant because single people are much more susceptible to the machinations of the Democrat Party and leftism, much more easy to manipulate. And a lot of that is because, if you have a child and you're not married, then you're much more likely to see that as a crisis. Whereas if you're married, then you have the structure in place. Even if you weren't planning on having a kid, even if you feel like you're not ready for it, you have the structure in place to care for the child. And that's why we cannot give up on this issue. And if Republicans give up on it, then they've given up on themselves. They've given up on their own political future.
Matt, I think there's another thing that's happening too, and that is that in the absence of definitions and reality and frankly God, in the absence of all of those things, what you end up with is a belief that the government is God and simply can redefine reality at whim, which is why you now have the belief, like, look, no matter what bill the government passes, or no matter what Supreme Court decision is made, suggesting that marriage is actually between any two consenting adults, marriage is not between any two consenting adults. It just isn't. I mean, it's like if the Supreme Court made a decision tomorrow declaring that the color blue is yellow, well, they can make that decision, and we can build all of our laws around that silliness. But it does not reflect reality. And eventually...
Okay, here's the funny thing. Blue can be yellow. And I know this is weird, right? I know this is strange, but like, how long has blue been blue? How long has yellow been yellow? If you go to a different country, right? Maybe they call it a different name. Is it still blue? It's one thing, you notice different cultures notice different colors based on what the words are to sum up those colors. Right? They have a different color spectrum. Very similar, but there's different stages along that with different names. Because language is imperfect. And language is flexible, and language changes. Right? Language changes. Definitions change. Language is not fixed. Right? There's a reason I say y'all instead of you all. It's because I'm from Texas. Right? It's different. There's that's the thing, is like, you act as if we live in a fixed environment with fixed definitions and fixed language. No, I'm not a postmodernist, right? But I do think it's important that things like marriage, when you're trying to surmise human behavior with language, human behavior is broader than language. Human behavior encompasses more than language, right? Think about this. Let's just think about like life, the beauty, the impermanence, the spectrum, the vastness of it, right? And say you're watching a sunrise over the ocean or a sunset, whatever it is, whatever you like, right? Even on the West Coast, on the East Coast, but you're watching a sunrise over the ocean on a mountain. with clouds and it's pink and it's blue. And you say, wow, that's pretty. Is that really all it is? Is that really it? And could you even find the words to describe such a thing in its full magnificence? Could you do that as a person? As a human person trying to find words to explain something that is beyond your capacity. Language does a shitty job of explaining experiences, right? I had that experience on ayahuasca one time. I was like, wow, I'm going to try and explain this with words. That's going to be ridiculous. That seems impossible. I tried, but it didn't compute. So it's interesting to look at that and think like, oh, wow. So it's like that they can't even zoom out that far, right? You can't even go back a little ways when like before yellow was yellow, it was still yellow. You know what I mean? You feeling me? Let's continue.
Reality is going to have a say here. And in fact, it's not eventual. It already is having a say as marriage completely collapses, implodes, and people don't have kids. And we have perennial adolescence and the idea that adults are atomistic individuals who ought to be pursuing their own hedonistic pleasure until they die.
Straw man. Adults are atomistic individuals that should be able to pursue hedonism until they die. Straw man. That's it. You guys see how somebody explain to me how that's not a straw man. How it's not a straw man. Just like the carnivore Aurelius guys, like casual sex is bad. Blanket statement. Stupid, lacks nuance, small brain shit. That is small brain shit from Ben Shapiro. And that's somebody that I respect, who I think is a above average thinker. That is fucking ridiculous, dude. Grow the up. Come on, man.
Yeah, and this is, so when people ask, well, why does it matter if there's quote unquote gay marriage? How does it affect you? This is the question that Rogan asked several times when we were talking about it. And this is the effect right here, is that it makes marriage.
It makes Ben and Matt upset. It gets their panties in a bunch. That's the effect. That the effect starts and ends with Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh crying. That's it. That's all you got. Now he's going to go on to say something about how it makes marriage mean nothing. And it's like, well, no, that's not what it means. It's pair bonding. And before there was marriage, there also wasn't marriage. Right? And before that was impressed upon us, because Matt seems to think that like all of human history has been single pair bonding, which is the most comical thing I've ever heard in my life. You think the entirety of human history has been monogamous pair bonding? Do you also think the Earth is 6,000 years old? Because if that's the case, then it makes sense. But outside of that, you're absolutely ridiculous, dude. But maybe Matt does think that like the devil planted dinosaurs on the planet to try to fool us. It was the devil. And, the Earth is 6,000 years old and Graham Hancock is full of shit. I don't know. But it seems to me, as a married heterosexual man, that two dudes get married, two chicks get married, has nothing to do with me. And if they're happy, I am happy for them.
Pointless in the minds of so many people. And in fact, Rogan said himself that it's sort of silly. It makes it seem like a silly, useless, pointless thing. If marriage is not fundamentally procreative, then what's the point of it? And then what do you have? You have younger people especially who they pick up that message, they hear that loud and clear, and they say, well, there's no why get married? There's no point. And then you see the collapse.
Again, it's a straw man. It's so bad. It's a straw man and slippery slope, actually, if we want to go into fallacies. But yeah. I think that it actually strengthens marriage, right? It's like, hey, no matter who you love, you can make that tangible, real commitment to one another. You can make that happen, no matter who, right? No matter what that is. That's not a choice, right? Matt thinks if you're gay, then it's some kind of affliction given to you by God that you have to like overcome. That's absurd, man. That guy wants people to be depressed and unhappy their whole lives. He gives zero about anybody's well-being besides himself and his religion. That's it. So they've now continued to make these straw man claims about how that devalues marriage and makes kids not want to get married. When I think that kids seeing healthy marriages of any sexual orientation is positive. And given the divorce rates, the more they can see, the better, because a lot of kids don't have that. So they kind of rely on seeing healthy marriages with their family and and friends. And I think that's really important regardless of their sexual orientation, knowing that, hey, because if we know now that gay marriage has been legal forever, but like it's legal at the federal level, we've set this in stone now. We're at where we are. In 20 years, more gay men and women, young men and women, will see healthy marriages. Now there'll be some unhealthy ones in there too, of course, but like they'll have more opportunities to see healthy gay marriages, and that once that's more frequent and more accepted, and in 10 years there's gonna be zero friction on this unless we live in Gilead. It's just better off. Where everybody's better off. Everyone is better off. And I don't know why I spent 25 minutes talking about this, but Jesus Christ, man, it's just like this is a 6-minute video I was gonna play of them, and it's so. I want these guys to do better. Like I actually don't mind them, but trying to understand how you get here as a human being is really challenging for me, right? Like I think if I look at Matt and again, I'm trying not to be a dick here, but like clearly had like some skin issues growing up. You can see it. He covers it up with a beard. Luckily, he can grow a really great beard and has great hair. That probably wasn't easy, That probably wasn't easy. I get that, man. I was a fatty. It's not easy. It's not fun to be that kid. To feel kind of isolated. And I think I can understand why you would then kind of bind so hard to something that in theory is unconditional acceptance as long as you have the right sexual orientation. Yeah, I could see how that would give him something to hold on to. And maybe like he feels like he needs to now live through that exclusively to his own intellectual kind of downfall in a lot of ways, but they're doing better than I am. So it is what it is. But I'm trying to understand. I try and like really look at the guy and be like, how do I understand how you get here and attribute like a positive intent to what you're doing. I don't think that he's being malicious. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes, the people that when you attack people on the left, the right, whatever it is, like it's like the left is evil demons and they're baby killers and all this other stuff, or the right is a fascist. But it's like you're just intellectually lazy in doing that. And I think it's important to like steel man things and look at this and say, hey, like, can I really look at this guy and be like, attribute positive intent to what he has to do, which I do genuinely feel that way, and handle it as such, right? So it's hard to look at it, but it is what it is. Clearly he has some kind of need that's being met by this dogmatic behavior, and he feels threatened, and he acts like he feels threatened in whatever way where he has leverage, which is in this kind of a pseudo-intellectual reality. I want to share with you what it takes to create this kind of content. I have to sift through piles and piles of bullshit from political ideologues that are completely ridiculous and try and find the truth. I've got to go from the left to the right to the center, all over the place. It's exhausting. I'm losing my fucking mind. But one thing you can do to help me out and help my mental health is subscribe to this channel. Turn on post notifications, like this video, leave a comment, just something, please. I'm losing my shit, and you're the only one that can help me. Subscribe to the channel.